We are live once again. Coffee with Humans, broadcast internationally with my new friend Eugenie Drakes. Eugenie, welcome to Coffee with Humans.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am excited to have you here. I know very few things about you, which really is the essence of Coffee with Humans, that we get to meet each other in this space with the intention of creating a better place, better world for all of us. And I know from, I'm going to go out on a limb here, from your accent and your telephone number, you are not in the United States, as I am. I'm near Chicago, Illinois. Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Johannesburg, South Africa.
That's awesome. I love it. Isn't it fascinating that we get to connect in this virtual space? This would not have been possible 20 years ago.
Jason, I keep on laughing about it. Again, at the age of 70, which I am, and I'm actually excited by it because instead of me feeling I'm going downhill, I've actually decided I'm going to have a whole new life for these next 10 years. And so I come from the days where we had connected with switchboards. I grew up without television. There was no such thing as television. And I was saying to somebody the other day that I was a connector and I felt like a switchboard operator, but those old switchboards where you plug things in and you pull people out, you pull out. And he sent me that to use on my profile. And I said, I can't use it because I work with a lot of young folk and they're not going to understand what that is, which led me to Googling because I remembered seeing a video of a couple teaching this, trying to get their 17-year-old children to work out those dial telephones. And it was the most hysterical thing. About 5 minutes later, the kids still didn't know what. So for me to be able to be speaking to you in the US with listeners all over the place, I find really exciting.
Isn't that fascinating? I find it exciting too, because there are so many cultures worldwide, and we can be exposed to them in almost instantaneous ways now. And I find it so enriching. It's personally enriching for me. And I would, and like you talk about, you've been through a lot. You grew up without television. I grew up with the television being shut off at night because they stopped broadcasting, at a certain time. And I don't know why. Like, why would they do that? People had to go home to go to sleep. I don't know. And now it's like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on thousands of stations, it seems. Of which now this is, like, ironically, this is kind of like a television station now.
I'm also quite enjoying it. I think because we've been forced to be online so much, it's very interesting for me because I think it's given a whole different dimension to humans, to humanity. If you look, for example, at when we were in hard lockdown and people working from home, there were mothers with children, there were families, and you can actually see people in a different context, in their own context. I mean, you're with me in my living room.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with you. I was on a conference call yesterday. Oh, sorry.
Carry on.
So I was on a conference call yesterday with somebody doing business with me, and all of a sudden we're getting off the call, and she's like looking off screen, and she starts chuckling. She says, "I'm sorry, I've got my 8-year-old here," and this 8-year-old's like just kind of like moving in from the side, like this, and and everybody's like, "Hi," and that's it. And I believe this idea of virtual work and virtual connection lends a bit of humanity to us as humans. It exposes elements of our life that normally we would just like leave at home, and then we go to work and do our business thing, put on our business hat and then take our business hat and go home. When in fact we're not designed to live probably that disconnected, because we are holistic beings. And I think it's healthy, or can be healthy, when we use the virtual work and virtual connection to invite, live holistically. And live with some sort of, I think, a new level of balance that I think is healthy.
I do, and you know what I've done just recently is being on Zoom calls. There might be somebody on the call that I don't know, that I've never met, but I'm curious about. And I have reached out to a number of them and said, can we have a coffee chat? And we've had, I mean, it's been really, really interesting. And they're people I would never, ever have come in contact with.
Yeah. Is that so? I'm curious. Why did you choose to click the button to have coffee with me?
First of all, I love the title, Coffee with Humans. I love coffee. I can't survive without my coffee. And it was also the humans, because I think that what COVID has done is it's kind of separated us all at many levels. I also think that the world is in a situation where we've lost our humanity. So for me, it was just that the human level for me was really interesting. And then, and when I watched you, I thought, I'm sure this guy is curious, and I'm sure he's mischievous, and I'm both. So we've got something in common.
I think you're right. You read me well if you thought I was curious and mischievous. Both of those things are totally true. And I'm thrilled that you look at this idea of Coffee with Humans, the title of it, and you connect with the idea of humanity and being human, because the name just kind of sort of came to me. It just kind of birthed out of my soul in a way. And I know that sounds like, maybe I don't know. It sounds weird, but it did. It just like, boop, kind of came out. It was like Coffee with Humans. And I used the word humans, or I believe it came in such a way that because I was looking at everybody wearing different masks almost. And I've done that too, like live with this idea of a different mask and then take that off, be this mask, and then take that off, be this mask. It's like, stop it. Like when you take off all the masks, we are so similar, especially even across cultures. We are all humans. We have different experiences, but at the end of the day, we are so similar. And we have the ability to connect when I think in real ways and make a real positive difference for each other when we take off the facade and get down to something that's real.
Jason, you've actually made the hair on my arms actually stand out, because that certainly has been a very big part of my life. I've been involved in the creative industries for the past 35, 40 years. And a good part of that was working in the handcraft sector. So I have been really blessed and privileged to work in rural communities, doing basic business training, market-driven product development, and access to markets. And I had a retail outlet, which was kind of my testing ground. And it fascinated me because we kind of did higher end. And for me, it was always the story, the fact that fascinated me, and the cultures that fascinated me. And often when I saw our guests or our customers fall in love with an item that I know had been made in the middle of nowhere by illiterate people, but really amazing, amazing people, that always used to, for me, be joy to my heart. And I mean, there are many, many stories. I remember one when Mrs. Obama was out in South Africa. They got gifts from our store for Mrs. Obama. So for me, the thing also was to take that to the groups that make, so that they can understand the impact they're having on the world. This is an amazing group of very rural, traditional living people. So I sent them a message to say, just to let you know, Mrs. Obama bought some of your products and this is what she brought. I get a thing back saying, what's Obama? And I thought, actually, why should they know, number one? And number two, why should they care? But again, that for me is the two realities that are such worlds apart.
I love it. I absolutely love that. And I agree with you. This idea of story and the human story and the human connection, we all long for a very deep and real human connection. And we get caught up in the idea of like, oh, well, it is, Mrs. Obama, and she's somehow special and set apart. It's like, wait a second, she's playing a role that might be special and set apart, but she's just a person.
Completely.
And she's and if she's buying these products, she's looking for that storyline. And I agree with you. On the other side, that connection, why should they care about the role? Why do we care so much about roles that we play when in fact we long for something deeper? We live our lives either pushing, like being afraid of something deeper, or pressing into something deeper. It's not, when nobody ever sits in the middle. It's like, well, maybe we'll go deep. It's like we either push it away, or we like desperately hold on to it.
Well, it's interesting that the interesting thing for me is actually the just the way rural communities and rural people will work. I know, had I had Mrs. Obama with me, with them, they would have connected in a heartbeat. They would have connected in a heartbeat. And often you could go in, particularly if I was working with a group that I hadn't worked with before, I would go in and I knew the minute I got out of my car and taken the first 4 or 5 steps, the people had decided how far they would let me in.
Really? How so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I think for me, when one's living close to nature, you're in tune with nature and you read things very differently from what we do. Okay. So it's the way you walk, it's the way you stand, it's how you're dressed. I always, out of respect, used to make sure. So, for example, many of the cultures don't like women wearing trousers. So I would always wear a dress. And what I would also do is I would also find out how to greet in the language, and kind of try and read a little bit about culturally what their norm is, so that one would do that. And then what I would also do is I would wear an item, a piece of jewelry or an item of clothing or something that reflected their culture.
Okay. So you made yourself approachable by sort of shedding your own culture to some degree to be accepted into their culture, to lower the barrier, really, of entrance into that society.
For me, in many ways, it was actually, I am the foreigner. I am the outsider. What do I need to do in order to kind of let them open the door for me? And a lot of the time, I mean, we worked with a group of artisans in Swaziland, and they did grass weaving with baskets. And their work was not exciting. And so we decided what we would do is we would do a basket weaving competition with them. And one of the criteria was they had to use 3 colors to start getting them motivated. Anyway, we ended up with all these baskets. And I looked at the team and I said, how are we going to judge these baskets? I know which basket I like, but I have no idea how to judge this. And it's a tricky thing. So what we did is we got in 3 of the master weavers and we asked them to teach us how they basket. We then went through the judging process ourselves. We then got the master weavers to come in and judge, and the same baskets won. And the beautiful thing for me about that is that gave us a methodology on which to teach and to buy. So there were 5 checkpoints on it, and the crafters knew that a basic basket, they would earn, say, $20. If those 5 criteria were there, they would get more for that basket because the value of that basket was more. So what it actually did with hindsight is it pushed quality control back to the weaver. And it made the buying process much easier because everybody knew what they were being judged on. So again, wow. Often the wisdom and those things came from the people themselves, and it translated into an amazing opportunity that served what the market need was.
Wow, that is insightful. I mean, that's deep stuff to be be dealing with. I think a lot of people, especially, I don't know, the American culture is a pretty consumer driven society where we just buy stuff just to throw it away sometimes, which is absurd, I think, to me. And 2 generations ago, that was not the case. 2 generations ago, people bought stuff, held on to it, and would keep it forever, and didn't
Yeah.
have so much. And at the end of the day, didn't have so much stuff, and they fixed the things that needed fixing. But today, it's just like, wow, the fashion changed, and boom, we got to buy next year, and then, oh my gosh, my widget broke, and instead of gluing it back together, it's like time to buy another one. And
Yeah.
and I feel like we live in a throwaway society of where quality isn't really not the issue, and we don't even know what makes a good product in a lot of cases. And yet you're dealing with, in this instance, at least, it sounds like you're dealing with a society that's making something that's valuable to them, and they have considerable standards, and then you're overlaying on a buying process so that you can bring that to market, and then provide economic value back to that culture, exposing their culture and their standards and upholding those in a way from the manufacturing process on forward.
The sad thing for me is that plastic and China have infiltrated many, many, many of those people. And so a lot of them are no longer making, because a lot of the product is actually were utilitarian products. But why would I weave a basket to make beer in when I can actually go and buy a plastic tub to do it? So fewer people are doing it. But what for me is really interesting is that there's a fantastic, exciting new thing happening here. And I think it's also because for me, Africa's time is now. So there's just been a collaboration with a young designer and furniture makers, but they craft beautiful furniture, and traditional Zulu basket weavers. And they made a bench which went to Paris for an exhibition. So the designer designed, the woodworkers made, and the weavers had to weave the back of this bench. It's called the Tlabisa bench, which is the name of the town that it came from, and the family that were involved in it are master weavers. So it's actually what it is doing now is that's shifting it into a totally different level. And that for me is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the idea of a master craftsman is lost in a lot of manufacturing now. And a lot of, at least in the States, a lot of things have been moved off to automation. And I remember I worked at an automation company a long time ago, and Harley Davidson, the motorcycle manufacturing company, makes, they make high-end motorcycles, and they have these pinstripes that they paint along the tanks, the gas tanks, and the fenders. And they would train a person for 6 months to paint the pinstripe on that tank, which is a real problem if you have turnover in your business, employee turnover, because you now have a 6-month ramp up time to be able to get a quality tank out. And so they wanted robots to do it. And we actually had a problem with robots even doing it because the way that robots were programmed at the time, even switching the program between drawing something circular or drawing something elliptical would pause the arm for just like a millisecond, and that was enough to create a little blob of paint that was now unacceptable according to Harley qualities. And so there was a whole reprogramming process that got put in place to custom made to allow the painting of these tanks. But it begs the question of if a robot can do it and you can just buy more robots and push out more product, is it valuable, or does that decrease the value because you don't need a master craftsman anymore? You just need to buy another robot and plug some software in. That, to me, I think, I believe it pushes away from the human element,
100%.
And it actually undermines it undermines what we want to do with our lives, which inherently I think everybody wants to create something that's meaningful, or many people want to create something that's meaningful in the world, and something with our fingerprint on it, right? Something that's lasting, something that's memorable for us, and we actually make decisions against it by choosing against the idea of being a master craftsman. Why shouldn't I be why shouldn't I be a master craftsman and create some fantastic basket and spend hours and hours doing it and charge a lot of money for it? Why do we not respect that anymore? And is that shifting?
I think the younger generation certainly are. I mean, I think the younger generation that the Gen Zs and below are much more ecologically conscious. And I don't think, I mean, if you look at the minimalist movement, in my day there was no minimalism. Minimalism was to have, and people today are shedding. And if I look at the way my children live, they live much more with much less than what I grew up with and what I lived with. And even myself, I mean, my big thing is that I've got a vision of reducing my life to 2 suitcases. I would love to have my computer, air tickets, and 2 suitcases with everything that belongs to me in them.
Wow. When did you start that? Well, when did you start making that shift? I mean, you're 70 years old now, and you've got this, we titled this chat living in 2 realities, worlds apart. It seems to be that you not only have been on this path, but was there a fundamental shift in your thinking at some point in time where you're like, I gotta set myself up somehow differently going forward?
Jason, I think for me, it was the whole COVID thing that really, for me, has been a very positive experience. I really am not dissing or putting down or, trying to make small the impact, the negative impact and the hurt and the harm, etc., that COVID has had. But I do believe that it's brought many gifts. I mean, when I went into lockdown, and I'm really, mindset for me is really important. Mindset can make you or break you. So when we went into lockdown, I thought, this is either going to break me or I'm going to break it. So I went in with a mindset that I am now going on a retreat. And I'm going to be in this space for I'm not sure how long. But the beauty of this space is that I have my cat, I have a beautiful garden, and I can do what I want to, when I want to, how I want to. And for somebody who was out and about and doing all sorts of things all of the time, it was difficult because I felt trapped. I was irritated by it. I was fearful, all those things. But what it did is I spent a lot of time online. And, my son, again, I've had many teachers, but my son once said to me something about, Mum, you must understand, I live my life on Google. So I went home to try and work out what the hell that was. Well, I now know that you don't need telephone directories, you don't need roadmaps, you don't need any of. I spent a lot of time in Google, with Google. And I think for me, it was just that, what are the advantage of this? What have I learned? How does one look at things differently? For me, the one thing that came out of it was, I've got a saying, which to me is, wealth is the feeling of abundance triggered by gratitude. Poverty is the feeling of scarcity triggered by the fear of loss. And those deep. Both came to me strongly from working with a workforce.
Wow.
So again, it was, and it is mindset. It is, and for me, it's the human connection. What did I miss? In fact, what did I miss most? When we were isolated, we were not allowed to go out. A cappuccino from a coffee store, and my grandchildren. Those were the 2. but I'd made a whole lot more. I'd made connections with people. I'd been able to experience things that I wouldn't have. I'd spent time investigating. My curiosity took me all over the place. I mean, we wouldn't, had it not been for that, Jason, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
That's totally true. I would not have coffee with humans if it weren't for COVID. And within the description of our chat, we talked about this, the idea of the gift, the gifts of COVID, and really it was a gift, depending on how you look at it. I was walking around a memorial the other day, and actually I want to just give a shout out here to Guy who's listening on YouTube. I believe we all essentially crave items that have a backstory, not just mass made products. And I think he's right. I think we all at the end of the day really want something of meaning and value, and how we go about doing that is different for all of us. So I was walking around a memorial the other day for a war, actually, that years ago, and they had an audio clip that played, and it was a gentleman talking about the sound of helicopters. He's like, the whop 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 sound of helicopters, and he said, he says, what a welcome sound that was when the helicopters came, because we knew we were going to get food, we knew we were going to get supplies, we knew we were going to get safety, we knew we were going to get brought out, we knew there was going to be medical attention, we knew that somebody was on the way to help us. And in that moment, I was thinking that's one side of the story. That's just one picture. The other side is the whop 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 means disaster and danger and death and destruction. And it really does depend. If we look at something like COVID, a global event of really kind of an unprecedented magnitude, it's a global event, and the two sides of that are either this is a gift to be used in some way, or this is something to be for our destruction and danger and hide out. And I'm convinced, and it sounds like you are too, that in all of these things, such as like COVID, we can use those things and see them as gifts. And when we see it that way, we create something good. And when we don't see it that way, we create something bad.
100%. 100%. And to me, it's that thing about the difference between moving away from something or moving towards something. So for me, it's that thing, we have that choice. And not choice doesn't necessarily always bring pleasure. Sometimes there's hardship that goes with it. But again, what is it that one would want? To me, I'd much rather move towards something, because at many levels, I then have more control than moving away. You run away to what?
Right. Absolutely. That's a great lesson in that. There's a great lesson in knowing what you want and working towards it, rather than knowing what you don't want. And because if you're just pushing away from something, there's a world of opportunity of things that you could get involved in, none of which is necessarily going to lead you to a place that you want to go. Instead, define where you want to go and go live out of that. And that I think leads to a more profound life. And like you talk about, there are circumstances that come upon each of us that we didn't ask for, and we have to roll with. And so even though we're moving forward, in our goal, we are maybe setting the odds up in our favor, and at least setting a paradigm or a mindset where when things come into our lives that we didn't ask for, we're prepared to use them in a positive way for our benefit and the benefit of those people around us, which is, that's, for our viewers and listeners, Coffee with Humans is live, candid conversations with strangers who become friends. And Eugenie and I just met probably about a half hour ago, and we've been talking about about her life and what she's been involved in South Africa, and then also we're now talking about COVID and how we wouldn't be in this space had COVID not happened. And if you hadn't taken your respite, and kind of taken not a vacation, but taken a moment to just rest and reconsider, and had I not, our lives would be dramatically different than they were 12 months ago.
Completely. It's also, for me, I could sit and complain that I've been isolated. I haven't been able to go out and do the things that I used to meet. But here I'm having a conversation with you. And in fact, it's actually much nicer in many ways than going to a function and speaking to people you already know, or thinking, can I go and speak to that person? Should I? Whatever. I mean, here we are having I'm really enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. And I think that really does underscore the idea of, if you see what you're looking for, and if you're looking for something good, you will see something good. And if you're looking for something bad and struggle and pain, you'll see something bad, struggle and pain. And it really is just two sides of the same reality.
Absolutely. I think the other thing also is to get out of your mind and into your heart and do what excites you. I've seen many shows, similar to yours, but it was the coffee with humans and your energy that was what made me say, I'm going to do this one.
When did you, have you always lived with that concept of, do something that you love, move with your energy, look for those, kind of flow into where the river's flowing, or have circumstances in your life brought that about for you?
I think circumstances in my life have brought that about for me. And again, I'm better off for it. I mean, I really believe that I'm blessed. But I think that the other thing also is age. When I turned 70, I kind of thought, geez, like, I'm 70. But what does that mean? So what it means is I have a piece of paper which puts my birth year 1951. I have a body which feels 85 some mornings when I try and get it out of bed, but my heart and spirit are 23, 24. So what is this? So I had a conversation with myself and I said, this is going to be the next 10 years. This decade is going to be the decade where you do what you want to, when you want to, how you want to, while you are making the difference you want to. So again, it's an attitude. I believe firmly it's an attitude. And again, that bore out when I was sitting with 360 pluses for vaccinations. And I looked around and I thought, hell no, this is not my tribe. I don't want to be here. I do not belong here. Jab me and let me go.
That is awesome. I can see that too. I mean, I get a glimpse of your energy, and I'm just kind of envisioning. You're telling this story about about having a shop and having some products that were manufactured, by people who we see on movies or something like that, or documentaries, and I can see you out, on the plains and in the heat and engaging deeply, richly with life. And I can also see the contrast of like herds of people like, well, we gotta, hunker down. We gotta, gotta de-risk ourselves. And I feel like I can see how you would have been like, hell no, this is not me. I'm not doing this for the rest of my life.
No, hell no. No. Oh, my hip, I had this operation and my hearing aid, this, and I'm going, no. I've worked with people that have real things to worry about. Baby shoes, you've got nothing to worry about. Change your mind. And I guess
right.
also I'm blessed. I've got fabulous grandchildren, and to see the world through their eyes also is just extraordinary. I mean, I had my 3-year-old grandson. I was looking after him. He was with me last night, and I had a friend to dinner. In fact, Guy, that's on the phone, on the call, and he had a big tub of Lego. And the two of them, I actually was babysitting, in inverted commas, 2 kids last night. They were having an absolute ball. When last did you play like a child? And it's fun to play like a child.
It's so, you know what, it really is. I'm 43, and you nailed it right out of the gate. I'm a pretty curious guy and a little bit mischievous, and always have been, and not ashamed of it at all. And I've always kind of dug into, like, what is the real raw experience now to just get involved in, and I always felt a little detached, I think, from life, kind of like I'm kind of sitting on the outskirts, and I got to like perfect it to get like deep into it and then do all this stuff. And I've done a lot of things, and it's been somewhat successful and somewhat terrible and failures at the same time. And I've gone through some transitions in my life that have really allowed me to step in, like wipe away some of the like, I got to figure this out perfectly, and really jump in and be part of the experience, like a kid sitting there, like, just like, this is the only thing that matters right now, that we play with these toys. And why the hell not? Because why would we not engage in that moment, like a child or with a child, instead of overcomplicating life and then looking back and going, what was it all for anyhow? So we can stand in line and get vaccinations and complain about our hips.
Yeah. I think what it also is, Jason, is I think it is that thing that we need to shift from our minds into our hearts. So if our minds, it was like coming into this, I thought, geez, like, Eugenie, what are you doing? And I thought, you are having a conversation with a human. That's all it is. Why do you want to make it any bigger?
Talk to me about shifting from your mind into your heart, because I think you might know something about this, having lived life and also having this particular personality that I think enables you to see these things that other people don't see. Talk to me. What is this mind into heart, and how do you feel that?
I think it is that thing about whose voice is it in my head that's speaking. Whose voice is in our head? And again, it's that thing about not letting the past make your decisions for you today. So is this something you were taught? I remember when I had my children, who are similar ages as you, there were things that I did that just didn't feel right to me. And then I realized I was parenting the way my mother parented me. Not me. I'm not my mother. So again, it's what do I feel in my heart and gut that is right for me? And that's what I'll do. And again, it's whose script are you fulfilling? Have you written the script for yourself, or is it somebody else's script that you're fulfilling?
So in that moment, so let's call it this way. I'm a 43-year-old guy. I'm looking at writing a script for my life. Like other folks probably in this middle-aged range, where we tend to be pre-programmed biologically to just go through these big shifts of perspective and like, let's reassess all of it, let's reassess everything. It seems that script writing is a difficult process, because there are pressures that push against it. Like, you say, hey, I raised my kids like my mom, and maybe because you didn't want to hear your mom go, you shouldn't be doing that. And I think as we transition, it seems to me, as we transition through age, that eventually we get to a point, or are offered the opportunity at a particular age, to look back and say, it was okay that you wrote your own script. Because we all kind of want to write our own script, but we believe it's not okay. And then after we live it, having rewritten it, having looked back, we go, oh, that was totally fine. And that was the absolute right thing to do. Good on you for writing your own script. Or we look back and go, I should have written my own script. Why did I do all this stuff? Why did I play it safe? Why didn't I go out and do the things I wanted to do? Is that true from your perspective?
I believe it is. I believe it is. I mean, for me, it's also that, I do what I want to do because I can, and we all have that choice. And we're sitting. If something is not comfortable for me, I will leave. I will stop doing it. If it's a platform I'm working on or whatever, and we seem to be going in different directions, I'm not going to stay there. But it sometimes takes courage, because what happens is you might need to jump overboard and not know what is coming up next. But for me, it's that thing of, at least I can make peace with myself. I'm more comfortable than this. My head will tell me you're crazy, but my heart and my gut are saying, just do it. Just do it.
And do you think the heart and gut are truth tellers?
100%. 150%. I've been working just recently with a number. It was a bee I got in my bonnet, about story, the power that lies in our story. So I do a lot of small people mentoring and small business mentoring. And the first thing I do is I get my mentee to tell me their story, their life story. Because within that lies your truth. Within that lie many gifts, many pointers. I never thought of doing that. I was working with somebody the other day. He does podcasting, he does video, he does all that, and technically he's fantastic. But he has such a gentle, strong beingness. And after our conversation, I said to him, you must be the one that is actually doing the connecting with a person. Let somebody else do the tech stuff. There are 10 million techies out there. And you make a video, you know what I mean? You press the button, I don't know. But I mean, it doesn't, but you have something special and unique. He said, but how did you know that? I said, but it's in your story. Here. And it's very interesting because again, at the end of our conversation, he said, gee, I never thought of that, you know. I came from a broken family in a broken small town. And I said, because you came from a broken family, because you came from a broken town, does not mean you need to stand small. You can stand tall. The world needs what you have to offer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think I so love that story. And there's so much hope in that, I think, because what I've experienced in my life is I tell people my superpower is seeing people, and I don't know how it happens. It just is. And I can nail that in 30 seconds if I felt like it. And sometimes it takes me a little bit longer. And I was talking with a guy the other day who he wanted to be a coach, and he was talking about mindset, you know, and he's an ultra marathoner. And he went on and on about coaching and you know, I think the power lies in the mindset, and you know, you can, or if you think you can, and that type of stuff. And I was like, I gotta tell you, that's coaching 101. You're the same as everybody else. Means nothing. And I said, so here's what I see. I see that you actually know how to run ultra marathons, and you're an expert in this. And I said, and if you led with this idea of, hey, I went from a broken, you know, person with not understanding my identity and sitting on the couch to ultra marathoning and finding purpose in pushing myself to my body's limits. Of course, like of course I can help you, you know, along that path. I was like, I'll believe you in that. I said, because there's no power in anything else. You've got to get back to this idea of what is the path that you've been on. The only person who can speak confidently about going a certain direction and saying, hey, that's the direction you should go, is a person who's been there. Completely. Everybody else is just like, you know, I think it says this way, and it holds no weight. And I believe, I'm with you on this. I believe that people communicate at a deeper level than we understand. And when we speak with assertiveness, with strength and authority from experience, that cuts through. It cuts through all this other shit that's going on that we layer on top, you know, about like, if you think you can, you can. It's like, yeah, that's true, but like, what then? You know, and I totally believe that we have to honor our story and then bring it forward because somebody needs to hear it.
Very absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's also, Jason, you know, I think it's that thing for me that, sure, it's very difficult for me to be objective about me. I see things, I see probably the rough bits and the painful bits, whereas other people see something different. And if to reflect that back to somebody is really powerful. It also enables you to meet them halfway, and you can meet them. You know, to me, that formulaic stuff does not work. In fact, a mentee and I were having hysterical laughter the other day because I said, I don't know how I'm going to put this conversation into a report, because he said, it's your problem, not mine.
Oh, I love it. I think I believe that you'd speak with so much wisdom and levity, right? About it's life is difficult, life is a struggle sometimes, and pushing through these things, getting to a point where you're like, you know, I'm gonna do what I want to do, what's birthed out of my heart. It takes a bit of living to get to that point. It's not easy, and anybody who says it is not seeing clearly sometimes. And I think, like you talk about this idea of you have a perspective on yourself, and yet somebody else has a different perspective. We are designed to live in community, and grow with the help and support of other people, to chip away those bits that don't belong, or to strengthen the bits that do belong, and have insights from other people, and accept them with grace. Sometimes when somebody says, hey, you're good at that, and you're like, no, I'm not, it's like, accept it with grace. Maybe they see something you don't. Or when they say, hey, you're a real jackass, and here's why, you go, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I frown all the time, you know, when I'm thinking maybe I could learn to not be so abrasive.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And, you know, I think for me, again, it's one of the gifts of age is that, before it felt like a big punch in the stomach, and now you go, oh, I can see another one coming. Well, you know, moving on, moving forward. It's that thing about whose truth is this? Is it my truth, or is it your truth? And if it's your truth, that's cool, but I'm not going to take it on board.
Yeah, totally. And is it possible, you know, from your experience, that sometimes your truth leads you into a place that you weren't meant to stay long. You were meant to go into that dark place and then go, wow, that was not I needed that, but wow, I'm not staying there.
Darkness cannot exist in the presence of light. And my big thing is to find the light. So it doesn't matter how dark the space is that you're in. If you find that light and grow it, because those dark places for me are gifts that are sent for our hearts to find our light and to move on.
How do we go about finding our light in the dark?
My squeeze times were not great when I was being squeezed. Sorry. My squeeze times were not great when I was going through them, but my squeeze times have changed my life, and I am forever grateful for them. And I think another big, big thing is to forgive. I forgave myself for things that I shouldn't have done, but did do and learned from. But you can learn and still punish. You need to stop punishing and take that gift and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. Sitting in punishment is no good for anybody, particularly for ourselves. And I think I believe there is also a point of honoring. So I think sometimes there's a deflection process that happens when, hey, we do something that, we shouldn't have done or whatever, and we deflect and say, well, let's look for something positive. I think sometimes I've had a tendency to move on too quickly through those moments instead of just like sitting for a moment, honoring the space and go, okay, how does this feel? Let's just sit here for a little bit and honor the fact that you're in a space that you shouldn't be in, and let's smell the air and go, yeah, this is the scent of a place you don't want to be anymore. And then say, okay, now where's the wind? Where's the wind blowing so I can get out of this cave and then get back to the light.
And you, Jason, you used a very interesting word there. You said, sit and ask myself, how does this feel? You're getting into your heart and your gut. If you sit in your mind, a mind for me can be like a candy floss machine. You start with a stick, and the more you run it around your mind, that little piece of sugar ends up like this. And it's going to take you, because our mind is there to protect us. So it's not that it's not doing its job, but it's making mountains out of molehills.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the candy floss machine, because it's totally true. We're just like spinning thoughts around, and all of a sudden, what was this one little fine particle just becomes big thing, and now it's like, how do I eat this?
Exactly.
Like slowly.
And when you eat it, you put it in your mouth. But it's also that thing about when you eat it, you put it in your mouth, and it goes into this horrible, tiny, hard bit of what?
Yeah.
And you swallow it, and it's bad for you. So it really is that thing about going into your gut. How does this feel for me? And it's not also, I think the other thing that we tend to do is we tend to find the mistakes. So again, after this, it's not to sit and say, well, Eugenie, how was that? Well, you could have done this. You should have done this. Why didn't you do? I'm saying I had a fantastic conversation. Well done. And sit and think back and go back to the feelings that I had while we were having this conversation. Because that for me has been a gift.
Yes, totally. So the reason I started Coffee with Humans, or a fundamental premise of Coffee with Humans, and it just comes out of me, and I think you'll respect this, is I think that humans specifically, have three different capacities that nothing else in the world gets. And those three capacities are, number one, to name our present reality and name a different future.
Absolutely.
So we can describe exactly where we're at and exactly where we want to go. Nothing else gets that. It just sort of exists, does its thing, doesn't question even its own existence. Number two is we can create that reality new every moment that moves us in a new direction. And number three is we can go about destroying things that no longer serve us. And I believe that with those three things, we have the responsibility and authority to be doing that in our own lives. And then in our community, where we have influence, to go about working that out with each other. What does that look like? This naming of reality and creating a new one and destroying things that no longer serve us. We have the responsibility and authority to do that. And nothing else on the planet gets that.
Absolutely. And I think that COVID also is enabling us to form new communities and new tribes. We don't have to go the old way anymore. The connections we now have, we have choice. Who do I want to move forward with?
Yeah. And I believe we have to be, we have the opportunity, and I think we should be careful about that. We should, like you talked about, standing there getting your vaccination and saying, this is not my tribe. Know who your tribe is and don't be afraid to move to that fearlessly, because if life is short, right? And if you're going to go do something, now's the time. Like the old adage, when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. When's the next best time? Today. So go about planting those trees today, if you haven't already, with the people who are there to help you build that forest. And if they're coming to there to not help you build, you don't need them. Jettison them off. And it's not that it's a bad thing to do that. Instead, you're concentrating the value that you believe in your heart you should go about creating. And I think that will lead to a more fulfilling life.
I love that, Jason. I really do love that. And the other thing I think also for me is being aware of the value of time. And if something or somebody is wasting my time, that for me is not okay. You can badmouth me, but my time is my most precious thing. And I am careful where and with whom I spend my time.
Have you always been careful with whom you spend your time?
I've not been as careful as I am right now. I mean, I would do things because I felt sorry for people, or I would do things because I felt I needed to do this in order to get that. To hell with it. I don't do that anymore. If you're wasting my time, I'm out of there.
How has that changed how you engage with your world?
It's brought my circle, made my circle much smaller, but it's made it a hell of a lot richer and a hell of a lot easier to be in. Because otherwise you're playing games.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you see that probably more acutely because you are looking at sort of a finish line coming up. Warren Buffett is now, I don't even know, 90 something or other, one of the most respected investors on the planet. And he just resigned, he's resigned from a bunch of corporate boards. And his comment was just recently, he says, I know that I've played the fourth quarter and now I'm into overtime.
Yeah.
And he says, so I'm just like shutting, I'm not quitting, but I recognize I'm in overtime. And it is reduced his scope and concentrated where he wants to spend his value. He says, because that meeting, there's no reason I need to be at those meetings. I add no value. And I believe that if we start that process earlier, what's my highest and best use now, and get into that process of thinking about that every day, what's my highest and best use today, then I think that changes the trajectory.
Oh, that's fabulous. I love that. For me, I don't do anymore. I work with the people who are doing or will be doing, and I will help them to do better.
Wow. That's got to be very fulfilling.
It's, to me, there is nothing more exciting than when you've got an eagle in a budgie cage and that eagle stretches its wing. You open the door of that cage and the eagle pushes its wing out feather by feather by feather. And to watch that eagle fly, it is, yeah. I mean, again, I've got goosebumps and the hair on my arms is standing up. It's my best.
That is, it's so enriching. I think that's the word I'd use. It's so enriching to hear from your experience today, because too often what I've found is that sometimes we sit in an echo chamber of our peers, and it's great. It's great to reach beyond to someone with more experience, who is fine-tuned or is continuing to fine-tune their life, and then see, okay, where does my belief system align with that, and how can I make changes today to bring myself to that future, rather than sitting in some malaise that sometimes we have a tendency to sit in.
Jason, I've grown up. I mean, I think I've grown up. I mean, I grew up during the days of apartheid, the struggle, all that kind of thing. And I live in a country that's very challenged and where a lot of people have been hurt really badly. And it is that thing about that I have had privilege. So how can I I can't change my past. I can't change my history. What I can do is use what I gained from that to help others catch up and grow stronger for themselves.
Yes, that's very challenging in a good way. I think, for me and for our listeners, it is, I hesitate to use the word inspiring because I feel like when people throw around the word inspiring, it also puts a weight on the individual to be like, well, I must remain inspiring. And I don't know that that's what we're looking for out of each other, but I do believe that you living your life and then exposing your life to other people in the way that you do professionally, and then obviously right here in Coffee with Humans, it is an aspirational experience that I'm convinced cuts through the noise of life and gets down to the raw character of being humans. And then what are we going to do about it once we've heard, the stories, and once we've heard the principles, we're responsible for them now. So what are you going to do, having listened to your story? And I appreciate that so much. And I honor the fact that you would be here. And I'm super thankful that COVID opened up this space, right? So that you and I could talk.
I think even more than that, Jason, it has been a pleasure. And I think for me, it's the fact that we have so much in common. We both love coffee. I think we both love humans. And I think both you and I endeavor to be the best human we can be.
Yes. I see that. I see that in you, and I take that and I accept that from you. So thank you so much. Anything else you want to close out on? We're up against our time, and I know I took you over time than what I said, but we're having such a great chat here. Anything you want to button up for our viewers and listeners around the world?
Jason, again, it's life is not as heavy as we think it is. How can you lighten your load? What do you need to let go of that doesn't belong to you? Put it down. Journey lightly. 2 suitcases. 2 suitcases, not everybody else's baggage, and other stuff as well.
I love it. All right. Well, on that note, 2 suitcases. Thank you, Eugenie, for being on Coffee with Humans.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Well, to our viewers and listeners around the world, this is Coffee with Humans, where strangers become friends. I met Eugenie about an hour and 10 minutes ago. And through this time, we have gotten to know each other, and I think have connected on a level that is deep and meaningful. And I trust that you have experienced that as well. Catch us on YouTube, live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, Daily Motion, and more, and also redistributed on Apple and Google Podcasts. We will catch you next time.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.